At the Civil Affairs Bureau, after waiting for 3 exhausting hours, I wearily sent a message, "Grey GU, let's break up." Just as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I bumped into my boss, Milesy. "Boss, are you getting married today too? Secretary song. Would you like to marry me?" I thought of the message Grey GU had just sent. "Iris Chow, stop joking. Luo Yi is really sick. Be good. Let's talk about our marriage registration in a couple of days." I smiled at Milesy and replied, "Sure." Today was supposed to be the day my fiancé Grey GU and I registered our marriage. I waited for him at the Civil Affairs Bureau for 3 hours before finally getting through to his phone, but it was his first love, by Luo Yi, who answered the call. "Where is Grey GU? Grey is cooking for me. Is there something you need?" "Miss Song, cooking." I curled my lips into a sarcastic sneer. I had been with Grey GU for 2 years and never knew he could cook. Then Grey GU's voice came through the phone. "Iris Chow, Luo Yi almost fainted today. Her family isn't around, so I'm taking care of her." I scoffed. Of all days to faint, it just had to be the day I got my marriage certificate. Perfect timing for feeling dizzy. I suddenly gripped my phone tightly. "Grey GU, I just want to ask you one thing. Are you still coming to get our marriage license with me today?" "Iris Chow, I can't get away right now." "What's the big deal if we get the license a couple of days later?" Grey GU's tone was somewhat impatient. I was just about to speak when I faintly heard by Luo Yi's exclamation from the other end of the phone, "Ouch, it's so hot." Then the call was abruptly ended, even without seeing it firsthand. I could imagine the scene of Grey GU comforting his beloved with heartbroken tenderness at that moment. Ever since Bai Luo Yi returned, whenever she so much as reddened her eyes in front of Grey GU, he would look as if his heart was shattered with concern. I never received such treatment. In Grey GU's eyes, I should be sensible and understanding. He never realized that I am also a woman who sometimes needs his care. Subconsciously, my heart tightened, but it didn't hurt as much as I had imagined. Listening to the busy tone on the phone, I took a deep breath, a mocking curve forming at the corner of my lips as I wearily sent a message. "Grey GU, let's break up. Enough." Since Grey GU wants to comfort his white moonlight, I'll just step aside for them. Just as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I spotted Milesy standing at the entrance. My boss, the CEO of the Yi Group. I froze for a moment. As Milesy's secretary, I had no idea this was on his schedule today. "President, are you getting married today too?" Milesy glanced at me with his dark eyes and gave a faint "Well, congratulations." I wanted to ask why he was getting married alone. But as a secretary, I knew it wasn't appropriate to pry into my boss's personal affairs, so I swallowed my words. Milesy smiled faintly. "Secretary Song, would you like to marry me?" "Me? Huh, what a coincidence." Could it be that Milesy was also stood up? Milesy's voice was deep and composed. "Since both of us are alone right now, why not team up for a wedding?" Thinking of the message Grey GU just sent. "Iris Chow, stop fooling around. Luo Yi is really sick. Be good. Let's talk about getting our marriage certificate in a couple of days." I smiled at Milesy and replied, "Sure." In less than 10 minutes, I was holding a freshly issued marriage certificate in my hand. Looking at the photo on the marriage certificate, I suddenly wondered if I had acted a bit impulsively. "What? Having regrets?" Milesy asked in a calm voice. I pursed my lips and countered, "Boss, are you just acting out of spite with Miss Jiang, as his secretary?" I knew a bit about my boss's personal affairs. I'd even helped pick out gifts for Miss Jiang before, though I'd never met this Miss Jiang. Any woman who could make Milesy put in effort must be someone special to him. Milesy looked at me, his voice indifferent. "She's not qualified, Secretary Song. You'll understand in time." "Okay." I generally comply with my boss's words. After all, he's the one who signs my paycheck. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a hint of resentment in Milesy's gaze just now, which didn't quite align with his domineering CEO persona. After parting ways with Milesy, I returned to my small apartment. When I was with Grey GU, we didn't fully live together, so I bought this small apartment for myself. As soon as I got home, I deleted and blocked all of Grey GU's contact information. From then on, he can take his single plank bridge, and I'll take my broad highway. Wait. I suddenly remembered that my broad highway now has Milesy on it. He gave me a week to adjust, after which I would have to move in with him, thinking about having to face him almost 24 hours a day as my boss during the day, and then at night, I suddenly felt at a loss. I also couldn't understand why Milesy had proposed this cohabitation arrangement. Was he also upset by Miss Jiang? I've only been his secretary for a month, and we're not that familiar with each other, and yet I actually agreed. Thinking about Milesy's face, could it be that I was swayed by his looks? Just as I was lost in thought, the phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, Song Iris Chow, have you blocked me?" Grey Goo's voice came through the phone, seething with anger, and one could easily imagine the dark expression on his face at that moment. That's just how he is. After being together for so long, whenever I show the slightest bit of temper, he immediately thinks I'm being unreasonable and his mood turns sour. I wonder how he can be so blind to Bai Luori's constant theatrics in front of him. The me from before yesterday would still accommodate him, coax him. But now, right, we've already broken up. If I don't block him, what's the point of keeping him around? My sarcastic tone seemed to infuriate Grey Gu even more. Can you stop being so unreasonable? If you want to get married, we can go register tomorrow. I laughed in anger. Grey Gu, you're not the only man in the world. You've lost your chance. He hung up the phone immediately after speaking, blocked the number all in one smooth motion. The next day, I went downstairs to head to work. Just as I stepped out of the neighborhood gate, a car pulled up beside me. A familiar car. It was Grey Goo's. He got out and walked up to me, immediately launching into an accusation. "Song Iris Chow, are you done with your tantrum? Can't you be more mature? Blocking someone is such a childish move." I rolled my eyes in exasperation. "Mr. Gu, have you lost your memory? We've already broken up." Grey Gu stared at me deeply, as if only now realizing I wasn't joking. "Luo Yi was genuinely sick yesterday. I was just taking care of her. If you're angry about this, I'll apologize." Even his apology was so half-hearted. I don't know how I endured this for the past 2 years. I sighed softly, feeling sorry for my past self. I looked up at him. "Grey Gu, both of us know exactly what your relationship with Bai Luori is. As your ex-girlfriend, I'll give you a piece of advice: choose your friends wisely. Now, move aside." "Song Iris Chow, what do you mean? How has Luori ever wronged you?" "She's just a good friend of mine." As expected, she's the one who holds a special place in his heart. He won't tolerate a single bad word about Bai Luori from me. I shrugged indifferently and pushed aside Grey Goo's raised hand as he tried to hail a taxi. At that moment, a black Bentley pulled up beside me. The driver got out and quickly approached me, speaking respectfully. "Madam, Mr. Yi has some business today and asked me to pick you up for work." It took me several seconds to process that the Mr. the driver referred to must be Milesy. This might be the aftermath of a whirlwind marriage. I almost forgot I married him yesterday. Before I could speak, Grey Gu looked at the driver in shock and asked first, "What did you just call her?" The driver glanced at him. "She is my employer's wife, so of course I call her madam." Grey Gu was even more incredulous. "Song Iris Chow, when did you get married?" "Yesterday." I casually uttered 2 words, ignoring Grey Gu as I got into the car. This news must have been a blow to Grey Gu. After all, he had always been so confident, believing I was utterly dependent on him. Even though he repeatedly abandoned me during dates for Bai Luori, I still chose to forgive him in the end. But this time, I won't. Back at the company, I quickly got into work mode. First, I organized the documents from various departments that needed approval from Milesy, then handed them to his assistant, Xiao Feng. Xiao Feng didn't take the files but smiled and said, "Secretary Song, from now on, you'll deliver the documents personally." But I felt somewhat conflicted. When I was suddenly promoted to be the CEO's secretary, Xiao Feng had briefed me on many precautions, one of which was not to enter Milesy's office without permission. Xiao Feng explained, "The CEO has instructed that Secretary Song may now enter and leave his office freely." His tone carried a hint of meaningful implication, and I guessed he probably knew about my marriage certificate with Milesy. All right, holding the documents, I reluctantly knocked and entered. Though I hadn't yet figured out how to face Milesy, Having your boss become your husband is somewhat awkward no matter how you look at it. Behind the massive desk, Milesy was intently reviewing documents with his head down. I quickly placed the files down and tried to slip out quietly. Secretary Song. A man's typically cool and detached voice came from behind me. I took a deep breath, put on a professional smile, turned around, and asked, "President, the documents are already on your desk. Is there anything else you need?" Milesy set down the pen in his hand, leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at me with a faint, amused smile. I raised my hand to touch my face. I had applied light makeup this morning. Could it be smudged? After a long while, Milesy finally spoke leisurely. "Have you had breakfast?" I quickly responded. "President, are you planning to buy breakfast? I'll go right away." There had been a few instances before where Xiao Feng asked me to order breakfast for Milesy. Milesy curled his lips and teased, "Secretary Song really is an excellent employee." "I guess so, otherwise the CEO wouldn't have suddenly promoted a newcomer like me to be your secretary, right?" On this point, I wasn't being modest. I really couldn't think of any other reason. I originally applied for a position in the company's design department, but was unexpectedly hired as the CEO's secretary. If it weren't for the doubled salary, I wouldn't have been willing to take this secretary job. Milesy's eyes flickered slightly upon hearing this, and he pointed toward the coffee table, saying, "There's breakfast over there, eat it." I froze for a moment, staring at him in confusion, not understanding his meaning. Milesy patiently added, "Your stomach issues are from not eating on time, especially skipping breakfast. That breakfast is for you. Have some. My boss brought me breakfast." I always feel a bad premonition, and how did he know I have stomach problems? Thinking this, I voiced it out loud. "President, how did you know I have stomach problems? And how did you know I skip breakfast?" Milesy said nonchalantly, "You're my secretary, shouldn't I know a thing or two about you?" After a pause, he looked at me and said, "Secretary Song, have you forgotten that you're not just my employee now, but also the person on my marriage certificate? I don't want to become a widower right after getting married." His words sounded harsh, but they tugged slightly at my heart, and a sudden warmth welled up in my eyes. I had been with Grey Gu for 2 years, yet he never noticed my stomach issues, let alone reminded me to eat on time. I remember one time when my stomach hurt so badly I couldn't bear it. I gave him a call and asked him to buy medicine for me. He immediately replied with just one sentence, "Buy it yourself on Meituan. I have something urgent to attend to right now." Before I could even utter a word, he mercilessly hung up the phone. Later, I accidentally found out from his friend that the urgent matter Grey Gu mentioned that day was actually going to the airport to pick up Bai Luori, who had just landed. I know that at Grey Gu's place, I will always come second to Bai Luori. Perhaps back then, he was only with me because Bai Luori hadn't returned yet. I was just a substitute. Secretary Song, the cool, pleasant masculine scent wafted into my senses, snapping me back to reality. I suddenly found myself face to face with Milesy's strikingly handsome features, magnified before my eyes. My heart inexplicably began to race. "President, is there something you need?" Startled by Milesy like this, all the suppressed emotions I had been feeling earlier vanished without a trace. Milesy lightly tapped my forehead with his hand. "What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and eat your breakfast." This small gesture made my face flush slightly with a rosy hue. I instinctively glanced toward the door, worried that it wouldn't be good if someone happened to walk in and see. Even though I married Milesy, I still didn't want the people at the company to know. Otherwise, who knows how many would gossip behind my back. Seeing my cautious demeanor, Milesy couldn't help but frown. "Don't worry, not just anyone can casually walk into my office." "Okay." I quickly walked over to the coffee table, picked up the breakfast, and said, "Then I'll take it back to my desk to eat." Secretary Song took breakfast from my office. "Aren't you afraid of being misunderstood?" I paused for a moment. That did seem like a valid point. Silently, I sat back down on the nearby sofa and chuckled awkwardly. "Then I'll finish eating before leaving." Milesy finally walked back to his desk with satisfaction and continued reviewing the documents. At this moment, the office was eerily quiet, making me hesitant to chew my food too loudly for fear of disturbing the peace. I have to admit, The breakfast Milesy prepared suited my taste perfectly. He seems like quite a considerate person. Subconsciously, I glanced up at the man behind the desk, noble, refined, and strikingly handsome, at the company. I often see some female colleagues fawning over Milesy. Before, I only saw him as my boss and didn't pay much attention. But now, looking at him carefully, he really is quite attractive. It's hard to believe that I actually married him. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Milesy looked up, flustered. I averted my eyes, finished the last bite of my breakfast, stood up, and said, "President, I'm done eating, I'll go back to work now." As I reached the door, the man's gentle voice came from behind, "Madam, let's have dinner together tonight." I neither agreed nor refused, just hurriedly ran out, mainly because I couldn't bear the title of madam. Before, when I was with Grey GU, I was always the one chasing after him. Now, suddenly being treated this way, especially by my own superior, I just can't seem to get used to it. It was soon time to get off work. By the time I finished my tasks, it was already 7 o'clock. I glanced at the CEO's office, where the light was still on, and wondered when he would be able to leave. Had he forgotten about the dinner he mentioned this morning? Forgetting might be for the best, otherwise, staring at Milesy's face for too long would be too much for my poor heart. As I was thinking, a WeChat message popped up. "Milesy, wait for me in the parking lot." I let out a soft sigh and resignedly headed to the parking lot. "Secretary Song, are you waiting for someone?" I stood at the entrance of the elevator lobby in the parking lot and ran into Lin Hao, the marketing manager, who was walking out. I nodded. Lin Hao stared straight at me. "Iris Chow, when do you have time? Let's have a meal together." I frowned. When I first joined the company, Lin Hao would occasionally ask me out for meals. I had refused many times, but he remained persistent. I was quite aware of his thoughts about me. Just as I was about to voice my refusal, my phone rang. Seeing that the caller ID showed Milesy, I quickly answered, "Hello, Exit B. All right, I'm on my way." After hanging up the phone, I said a quick goodbye to Lin Hao and hurried towards Exit B. Spotting the Bentley from this morning, I instinctively reached to open the back door when Milesy's cool voice came from the driver's seat. "Secretary Song really treats me as a chauffeur, doesn't she?" It's just habit." I smirked and sat down in the passenger seat. Milesy glanced at me. "Secretary Song is quite popular." Why the sarcastic tone? It took me a moment to realize the man had just seen me talking to Lin Hao. Could it be? "Milesy, you're not jealous, are you?" Realizing this, I suddenly felt bolder and called him by his full name. Milesy let out a light hum without answering, then started the car and drove off. But I clearly saw him stiffen slightly just now, that awkwardness of having one's thoughts exposed. This man towards me. The restaurant we went to was a 5-star Western dining establishment. Indeed, life is good when following a big shot. While waiting for the food to be served, I went to the restroom. As I stepped out of the restroom, I saw Milesy on the phone in the restaurant hallway, just hanging up. I was about to walk toward him when suddenly I noticed a familiar figure bumping into Milesy. It looked like an accidental collision. "But isn't that woman Bai Luori?" Sorry. Bai Luori apologized to Milesy with an embarrassed expression, her voice dripping with sweetness enough to give anyone goosebumps. Milesy took a big step back and glanced at her. Bai Luori appeared even more shy and timid. "Hello, sir, can I add you on WeChat?" Milesy coldly uttered 2 words, "No." Then he strode away. Bai Luori stomped her foot in frustration. I watched the scene unfold, curling my lips into a cold smile. Bai Luori had clearly been trying to flirt with Milesy on purpose. I wonder what Grey GU would think if he found out. After all, Bai Luori was the purest white moonlight in his heart. Returning to the dining table, the dishes had already been served. I was somewhat surprised. All the dishes Milesy ordered were my favorites. He seemed to really know me well. We were only halfway through the meal when a familiar voice interrupted us. "Miss Song, what are you doing here?" I don't even need to look up to know it's Bai Luori. Then I heard Grey Goo's furious voice. "Song Iris Chow, are you breaking up with me because you've found another man?" Originally, I wanted to ignore them, but hearing their accusations, I couldn't help but laugh and retort, "Where I am and what I'm doing, what business is it of yours?" Bai Luori sounded somewhat aggrieved. But this is a 5-star couple's Western restaurant, and you're here with another man. I'm not going to indulge her. What, is this restaurant yours? Do you think I can't afford to eat here or that I shouldn't be dining with another man? But when Gray Gu heard me speak about his beloved like that, his expression darkened. Song Iris Chow, clearly you're in the wrong here. Why must you be so aggressive? Who is this man? Why are you with him? My identity is none of your business. A cold voice spoke up as Miles Yi, who had been facing away from them, slowly turned around, his icy gaze sweeping over the two of them, upon seeing Miles Yi. Bai Luori was momentarily stunned, the hint of triumph at the corner of her lips gradually twisting into jealousy. Why was the man she had just set her sights on here? Gray Gu was clearly also intimidated by the cold aura surrounding Miles Yi. I walked up to Miles Yi's side, linked my arm with his, and said with a light laugh, "Let me introduce you, this is my husband, Miles Yi." "What, isn't Miles Yi your boss?" Gray Gu was shocked. He had thought the man looked familiar. He was the CEO of Yi Corporation, whom Gray had seen from a distance at a cocktail party. It was only then that I remembered mentioning to Gray Gu when I was hired as Miles Yi's secretary. At the time, he had just casually remarked, "Someone of his status probably just recognized your talent." In his eyes, what qualifications do I have to make Miles Yi like me? But he forgot that I was once ranked among the top 3 most attractive people in school. Miles Yi lowered his gaze to look at me and said calmly, "I am Iris Chow's superior, but now I am also her husband. Since Mr. Gu knows my identity, you shouldn't disturb my wife anymore." He didn't even glance at Gray Gu. Although Gray Gu can be considered a rich second generation, he's nothing compared to Miles Yi. He was seething with anger and could only glare at me. Bai Luori clenched her hands tightly. Didn't Miss Song plan to register with Gray yesterday? How did she end up marrying Mr. Yi? She still couldn't believe that I could possibly have such good luck. I said coldly, "Then I should thank you. If you hadn't been pestering Gray Gu yesterday, I might have missed Miles." I paused, raising an eyebrow. "But, Bai Luori, you seem quite interested in all my men." I took out my phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to Gray Gu. "Gray Gu, see for yourself what your pure and kind-hearted girl is really like. I never wanted to go this far, but Bai Luori just had to provoke me. This video is proof of her trying to flirt with Miles Yi, which I caught on camera." Bai Luori also came over to take a look, and her eyes widened immediately. Gray. I was just, Gray Gu wasn't stupid. Of course he understood what Bai Luori's intentions were toward Miles Yi at that time. But whether it was to save face or because he chose to believe Bai Luori, he glared at me with a grim expression. "Song Iris Chow, I know exactly what kind of person Luori is. Do you think this video proves anything? Look at yourself as my fiancé. You turned around and married someone else. Did you already latch onto your boss and then hypocritically claim you wanted to break up with me? Listen to what Gray Gu is saying. Every word makes it sound like it's all my fault." In his eyes, I'm the one who cheated on him. It's utterly ridiculous. I must have been out of my mind to ever like him. Bai Luori listened to Gray Gu's words, breathed a sigh of relief, and a hint of smugness flashed in her eyes. She had always known Gray Gu would stand by her side. I mocked, "Gray Gu, think whatever you want. Now that I've let you and Bai Luori have your way, and I'm married too, let's each go our separate ways from now on. If we meet again, let's pretend we don't know each other." Gray Gu was about to speak when Miles Yi coldly interrupted. "Mr. Gu, before registering our marriage yesterday, Iris Chow and I had a purely professional superior-subordinate relationship. Though we owe you no explanation, I won't tolerate anyone slandering my wife." With that, he picked up my bag from the side and took my hand. "Let's go." I let him lead me out of the restaurant. It had been a long time since someone stood up for me like this. At this moment, my exhausted heart seemed to find a trace of peace, along with a faint flutter. A week passed in the blink of an eye. I gradually adapted to my relationship with Miles Yi. At work, Miles Yi didn't give me any special treatment because of our relationship, but in daily life, I have to admit, he's a really good husband, very thoughtful and considerate. Suddenly, I feel quite fortunate. Though I was stood up at the Civil Affairs office that day, I ended up marrying Miles Yi. I just couldn't figure out whether Milesy was really stood up that day and impulsively decided to have a shotgun wedding with me out of anger. I asked him once, but he just smiled and said the time wasn't right yet. After that, I never asked again. As per our previous agreement, I also moved into Milesy's villa. However, I had just moved in when Milesy went on a business trip, which actually avoided the awkwardness of starting to live together, even though he wasn't around. He still reminded me to eat on time every day. My stomach issues haven't flared up during this period. After work today, I went back to the small apartment to pack a few things and bring them to the villa. Just stepped out of the apartment, a gust of autumn wind blew by, sending a slight chill through me. I walked towards the intersection to hail a taxi when suddenly a dark figure appeared behind me, getting closer and closer. I was about to quicken my pace when a large hand grabbed me, startled. I let out a scream. "Ah, it's me, Yi," Grey Goo's voice, still shaken. I looked up and indeed, it was Grey Gu. "Grey Gu, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you for days, and finally, here you are." Grey Gu looked at me, the strong scent of alcohol flooding in with his breath. I furrowed my brows tightly and forcefully shook off his hand. "We've already broken up. Why are you waiting for me? Yi, you were right all along. Bai Luori deceived me. She just wanted to find a richer man." It seems that Grey Gu did have doubts about Bai Luori after watching the video that day, and might have even investigated her. I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations, you finally see her for who she is. But what does that have to do with me?" Grey Gu looked dejected. "I'm sorry, can we not break up?" His words made me laugh in disbelief. Did he only realize my worth after his white moonlight let him down? "Grey Gu, I'm married, even if I weren't. There's no chance for us. Ask yourself, these past 2 years, did you truly like me, or was I just a substitute for Bai Luori?" Suddenly, I remembered a time when Grey Gu was drunk, repeatedly calling out Yi. Now that I think about it, he was probably calling out Yi back then, in his heart. There has always only been Bai Luori. I was just too foolish back then, moved by his repeated calls of Yi. Grey Gu fell silent for a moment, then gripped my hand again. "Yi, I've thought it over. I like you. I just didn't realize before that I had unknowingly fallen for you." "So what?" I remained completely unmoved by Grey Gu's sudden confession. "Just because you say you like me, does that mean I have to like you back? Please don't contact me anymore in the future. I don't want my husband to misunderstand." Hearing my words, Grey Gu's eyes turned frighteningly red, and his grip on my hand tightened. I tried hard to break free but couldn't. And a sense of fear crept in. "Grey Gu, let go of me." Suddenly, Grey Gu was struck by a punch, staggering and nearly falling to the ground. It was Milesy. Seeing him, my heart instantly settled. Milesy narrowed his eyes at Grey Gu. "Grey Gu, I warned you not to disturb my wife again." Grey Gu wiped a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand. Under the influence of alcohol, he seemed to muster more courage in front of Milesy. "E is my fiancé. You're the one who came between us." I looked at him with amusement, showing no mercy. "Grey Gu, isn't it ridiculous to act all sentimental now? I'm married to Milesy now, and I'm only his wife. As for you, just go do whatever you should be doing and stop showing up in front of us." With that, I took Milesy's hand and left, leaving Grey Gu standing there in stunned silence. Once in the car, I paused for a moment before speaking. "I came to pick up a few things. I don't know why Grey Gu was here. No matter if Milesy would overthink it, I still explained myself to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings." Milesy gave a low hum. "I know, as long as you're okay." Such a simple sentence, yet it warmed my heart. He came to see me the first thing after returning from his business trip. This must be what it feels like to be valued. "Milesy, Amham, can I hug you?" Without waiting for his response, I leaned in and held him tightly. At this moment, I saw him only as my husband, not my boss. I could clearly feel his body stiffen slightly before he raised his arms to embrace me in return, whispering, "Song Iris Chow, I'll always be here for you from now on." The tone carried certainty, with a hint of having gotten one's wish. No man had ever said such words to me before, and I could hear my own heart pounding like a drum. If I weren't sober enough, I would have thought Milesy had liked me for a long time. One weekend, I'm staying at home, planning to do some painting. Actually, I majored in design in college, but it's been a long time since I last picked up a paintbrush. I called Milesy to ask if I could use his study. Milesy, I want to do some painting. Can I use your study? Milesy seemed to hesitate for a moment on the other end of the phone before saying, the room next to my study, you can paint there. Okay, by the way, when will you be back? Soon. Do you want dessert? I'll bring some for you. I paused for a second, then laughed and said, if it's not too much trouble, then please bring me some. I do usually have a sweet tooth, but I never expected Milesy to notice. After hanging up the phone, I grabbed my painting tools and headed to the room Milesy mentioned. It's been about half a month since I moved in, and I've never entered this room before. The moment I opened the door, I was completely stunned. This is actually a studio, filled with many painting tools, except none of them have been opened. Does Milesy also enjoy painting? As his secretary, I'm thoroughly familiar with Milesy's basic information, but painting was never listed among his hobbies. But this studio is really comfortable, and I quickly immersed myself in painting. I don't know how much time had passed until the door was pushed open, and Milesy walked in carrying a box of desserts and a bouquet of yellow roses. Finished painting, I put down the brush and stood up to face him. Yeah, it's been a while since I last painted, so I'm a bit rusty. Milesy carefully examined my painting and said with a faint smile, not bad, your skills haven't declined. I was distracted by what he was holding in his hand and momentarily missed his words. Is this flower for me? Of course it's for my wife. Girls usually like flowers, don't they? Miles handed me the flowers and placed the dessert on the nearby table. Opening it, you can have a little dessert now, we'll have dinner soon. Holding the bouquet, the rich fragrance instantly enveloped me, and the corners of my lips curled up involuntarily. Thank you. This must be what it feels like to be cherished. The dessert was an exquisitely made strawberry-flavored cake, just the taste I love. Milesy, I've noticed that you, as a boss, have an exceptional understanding of your employees. Milesy looked at me, the corners of his lips curling slightly. Only when it comes to understanding you. My cheeks instantly burned, and I quickly changed the subject. Why is there a studio at home? Do you paint too? Milesy's eyes lifted slightly at the corners. I don't paint. Then this, prepared for you. Milesy calmly interrupted me. I pressed my lips together. If I still hadn't noticed anything unusual by now, I'd really be a fool. I looked up at him and asked, how did you know I could draw? I'm quite certain I didn't write that in my resume. Milesy said unhurriedly, Madam initially applied for the design department. Those who study design usually have some drawing skills. This studio is clearly set up for oil painting. How did you know I enjoy oil painting? I stared straight at him, trying to discern any subtle expressions, but the man remained composed, showing not a trace of guilt. He just smiled faintly and said, wait a bit longer, I'll tell you. After a pause, he added, Secretary song, next week is a university's anniversary celebration. Please add it to my schedule. With that, he walked out of the art studio. It took me a moment to react. Was Milesy also from a university? But someone like him must have been a prominent figure on campus. How come I've never heard of him? A few days later, University A's anniversary celebration. I hadn't planned on going back originally, but since Milesy was invited to return to University A, I accompanied him as his secretary. After reading the relevant materials, I learned that the Yi Group donates a significant amount of funds to University A every year. No wonder University A listed Milesy as a special guest. It's been a long time since I returned to school after graduation. While Milesy and the others were discussing matters with the president and his team, I took a stroll around the campus alone. As fate would have it, I ran into Bai Luori again. But then again, she is indeed a student at University A, so her presence here isn't surprising. I averted my gaze, intending to pretend I hadn't seen her and walk the other way, but she spotted me and immediately approached, completely shedding the fragile demeanor she had in front of Grey Gu, and arrogantly shouted at me, Song Iris Chiao, did you say something to Grey? Why has he been ignoring me lately? I frowned slightly. That day, when Grey Gu wanted to get back together with me, It seems he wasn't just drunk, he really had abandoned by Luori. I curled my lips mockingly. You know very well what you've done behind Grey Goo's back. Grey Gu isn't a fool. Bai Luori gritted her teeth in anger. It's all your fault. If you hadn't shown that video to Grey, how could he suspect me? Song Iris Chiao, you did this on purpose to get back at me. Bai Luori, Grey Gu is just a man I no longer want. Why would I waste my time seeking revenge on you? Don't flatter yourself by thinking you're that important. Bai Luori's arrogant face twisted with rage. Suddenly remembering something, she sneered, you're just clinging to a rich man, that's all. Do you really think a man like Milesy is serious about you? He's just toying with you. How do you know I'm not serious about my wife? A cold, deep voice sounded as Milesy walked over, wrapping his arm around my waist. His gaze icy as he stared at Bai Luori, he enunciated each word clearly, the only one I've ever loved in this lifetime is my wife. His words left both Bai Luori and me stunned. Bai Luori's expression froze, her heart shattered into pieces, her eyes filled with nothing but jealousy and resentment. Even if she wanted to use tricks to seduce Milesy, it was nearly impossible now, and in Milesy's words, I seemed to finally understand something I had been overlooking all along. Milesy. Have you known me for a long time? Milesy chuckled lightly, avoiding a direct answer, and instead said, let me take you somewhere. Under Bai Luori's unwilling gaze, Milesy and I left hand in hand, fingers intertwined. The place Milesy brought me to was the art studio at University A. I'm very familiar with this place. During my 4 years of university, I would come here to paint whenever I had free time. I tilted my head slightly to look at Milesy. How did you know about this place? Are you really a student at University A? Milesy nodded. But I only stayed at University A for half a year before going abroad. Suddenly it dawned on me. No wonder I've never heard of you. Someone like you would definitely be the talk of the whole school. Milesy chuckled softly. Someone like me. I searched my mind for the right words. Handsome, noble, like a deity descended from the heavens. So that's the high regard I hold in my wife's heart. Milesy lowered his gaze, his eyes burning as they rested on me, and said softly, 6 years ago, I met an even more dazzling girl here. My mind flashed, and I blurted out in surprise, that person couldn't have been me, could it? But I was certain I had never seen him before. Milesy didn't answer, seemingly lost in his own memories, murmuring, that day, I happened to pass by the art studio and looked in through the window. A girl in a white dress with a high ponytail was intently painting. The sunlight streaming through the window cast a glow on her, as if enveloping her in a halo, so beautiful. That was when I first learned of her existence at the school. I saw her for the second time at the freshman welcome party. She played a piano piece, and it was beautiful. That was when I learned her name was Song Iris Chiao. Truth be told, I was quite the popular figure on campus back then. After the party, many freshmen were eager to meet me, but she seemed to be the only one who didn't even notice me. Later, I would often take detours to pass by the art studio, running into her many times. Each time, she was completely absorbed in her own world, as if nothing outside mattered to her. Hearing this, my eyes grew slightly red, and my voice trembled slightly. And then, you went abroad. Milesy snapped out of his thoughts and looked at me deeply. Yes, my plans to study abroad were already set, but meeting you was never part of the plan. I never expected that even after I left, your presence would linger in my heart for 5 whole years. These words felt like a massive hand gripping my heart tightly, tears uncontrollably welling up in my eyes, blurring my vision. Truth be told, I've always known I'm good-looking, since childhood. Many have complimented me, and I've received countless love letters, but to think someone could hold on to their feelings for 5 years, this kind of affection was something I never imagined, never dared to imagine. I looked up at Milesy and asked, why did you never reach out to me? Milesy gently wiped away the tears at the corner of my eye with his hand, his voice slightly hoarse as he said, when I came back, you already had Grey Gu by your side. So I had no choice but to keep my feelings hidden. However, I never expected you to apply for a position at Ye Corporation. Perhaps this was fate giving me a chance. I sniffled and said, so you deliberately made me your secretary. I thought I was promoted because of my abilities. Promoting you to be my secretary was indeed my selfish desire, but you also genuinely met the requirements. Milesy playfully tapped my nose and chuckled. Did you think your resume would have reached me if the company's HR department hadn't approved it first? Then, I bit my lip. Who were you going to marry that day at the Civil Affairs Bureau? If you couldn't forget me, how could you agree to marry another woman? Milesy chuckled. Darling, don't you understand yet? How could I marry another woman before you? By the time I realized my feelings, it was already beyond control. I stood frozen for a long moment before belatedly realizing the truth. My heartbeat quickened as I asked in a trembling voice, "Were you looking for me that day?" Milesy's eyes burned intensely. "I thought Grey GU wasn't worthy of you. I originally intended to stop you from getting married. But I never expected Grey GU would stand you up, so what seemed like mere coincidence was actually his long-planned scheme." The man who appeared indifferent had harbored undiminished affection for the girl from years ago, like aged liquor that grows stronger the longer it's stored. I stood on tiptoe, wrapped my arms around his neck, and pressed my lips to his in a kiss. "Milesy, thank you for not giving up on me. Before, I thought Grey GU liked me, or at least took good care of me before Bai Luori returned. Now, with the comparison, I realize Grey GU was only kind to me because I bore a slight resemblance to Bai Luori. I used to be hung up on Grey GU, blind to the gaze that fell upon me from behind. Looking back now, it was utterly foolish beyond redemption. Thankfully, Milesy never gave up." Milesy wiped away my tears, lowered his eyes to kiss my brows with utmost tenderness, and whispered, "Song Iris Chow, I've finally married my girl." He took my hand, his slender fingers intertwining with mine. Leading me out of the art studio with calm steps, the autumn sunlight bathed us, stretching our shadows long. Returning home in the evening, Milesy went to the study. After I finished showering, I picked up my phone to reply to a few messages and casually checked my social media feed. Then, I suddenly noticed that Milesy had posted a rare update. The photo showed my back at University A today, with the caption, "Wish fulfilled." I curiously clicked on his profile picture and was surprised to find that he hadn't been inactive on his social feed, he had just blocked me from seeing it. I opened his first post, which showed a picture of my back in the art studio, with the caption, "She seems to really enjoy painting." The second post was a photo of me watching others play basketball on the court, captioned, "Is there someone she likes on the court?" My hands holding the phone trembled uncontrollably as I quickly clicked through every single post. There was a 5-year gap in between. Then, 2 years ago, the photo was still of my back, with the caption, "5 years later, I finally saw her again, but she was with another man, and she seemed to really like him." I quickly scrolled through a few posts and then came across the one from the day we got our marriage certificate. "I finally married my girl." From then on, his social media posts were all about my daily life, yet I never noticed a thing. My vision blurred as tears streamed down uncontrollably, my heart aching with a sour bitterness that made it hard to breathe. All these years, he had been quietly watching over me from behind, standing where I couldn't see him. When he saw others by my side, he didn't even dare to disturb. But he is Milesy, the president of the Yi Group. He should be shining brightly, surrounded by admiration. Yet for me, he is so timid. I stood up and headed straight for the study. When I pushed open the door, Milesy looked up at me. Seeing my reddened eyes, he immediately rose and strode toward me. I rushed into his arms and held him tightly. Milesy hugged me back and asked hoarsely, "Why are you crying?" My voice still carried a sob. "Milesy, why are you so foolish? You didn't tell me. What would you have done if I had really married Grey GU that day?" Milesy knew I had seen his social media post. Gently patting my back, he whispered, "As long as you're happy, nothing else matters." I raised my teary, reddened eyes, looked at him, and curled the corners of my lips. "Milesy, from now on, I'll only like you." The last time I saw Grey GU was at a banquet I attended with Milesy. He called out to me, forcing me to halt my steps as I tried to leave. The woman by his side wasn't Bai Luori. I had heard that Bai Luori had become the girlfriend of some rich second-generation heir. He looked at me, his eyes filled with complexity. "Iris Chow, how have you been lately?" I gave him a faint glance. Without you and Bailuri by my side, I've been doing just fine. Grey Gu frowned, still unwilling to give up as he looked at me, now radiant like a dazzling pearl, and asked, "Does Milesy treat you well?" I chuckled lightly. "Grey Gu, I really have to thank you for not marrying me, as it allowed me to marry Miles instead. I'm very happy now, so please don't disturb me again in the future." With those words, I walked over to Milesy, took his arm, and said softly, "Let's go home." Milesy glanced back at Grey Gu, who was still staring intently at me, and replied gently, "All right."